And that's one thing that Candi really helped me in the beginning, is making a list. So I'm like, what are the positives and negatives of this? Because if you don't make a list, you're just going to be overwhelmed and say, oh, well, I want the voice thing, but do I want this? It's like, no, you need to do the research. This is changing your hormones. You know, you might see somebody on Instagram that you think that has gone through a medical transition in XYZ way, but you don't know everything.
Transgender rights have been very publicly in the news lately, and while the landscape is evolving to be more inclusive of transgender people, the experience can easily be misunderstood. For instance, pronouns. For me, it still takes me a second to wrap my mind around they as a single person, but I'm in support. But more than that, I really wanted to understand the experience better. I mean, what does it really feel like when you don't feel like you fit in anywhere, or that your gender assigned at birth just never felt right? So I invited Frankie Love, assigned female at birth and identifies as transgender. Pronouns are he, him, and they. And his wife, Candi Lecoeur, who you will also get to know. I was really taken back by how evolved both Frankie and Candi are independently and as a couple that practices ethical non-monogamy. Yes, everyone, this was the most fascinating and one of the most insightful interviews I've done, and one that I think is really, really important. And I learned way more about the gender-bending identities and how they can change and evolve. Frankie has really been fiercely advocating for transgender and queer rights, among many others. All right, I'm going to get right to it. And I will say, if you want to learn more about my guests or finding your place in the story of changing a culture, go to ALLISON'S and get everything you need there. Here is my chat with Frankie Love and Candi Lecoeur. Frankie, would you mind introducing yourself? Tell us a little bit about your background. And I will say that what I'm excited about is you're going to be sharing your story of transition, and we're going to be learning a little more about what that experience has been like for you. So I'm so excited to have you. I think it's such an important story too.
Yeah, thank you so much. So yes, my name is Frankie. I am an AFAB, so I was assigned female at birth. I identify as a transgender person and a non-binary person. I previously have identified F to M, meaning female to male. And currently, at my current stage in my evolution, as I like to call it, I don't really find value in the man category at the moment, but I like being seen as masculine. So I would say my proper identification at the time would be transmasculine. And, that can change. And that's the best beauty, about gender. You can make it what fits for you best.
I have so many questions about that. Of the evolution of identifying as masculine or non-binary. And I think what's great about it is that gender fluid.
Yes. So it can be. So I always like to coach some of, people in my life if they need, assistance in that department. Sometimes I like to coach them and say, so do you find value in this? So if you say gender fluid, gender queer, non-binary, any of these identifying, names, if they feel good, if you're like, yes, that's me, that's awesome. But if it doesn't feel good, then you don't say that. Even though, technically they're kind of very similar, and they're under what we like to call as the trans umbrella. So the trans umbrella is like this big umbrella that all of these identities can be underneath, like genderqueer, non-binary, transmasculine, transfeminine, any of these identifying, names. If you find value to it, that is beautiful. If you don't, if you're like, that's not me, if you think that, so I've had some queer youth say, I'm not trans, but I'm genderqueer, and I'm like, okay, babe,
This is so confusing.
Right. Well,
yeah.
So it doesn't have to be, because it's simple, right? So where if there's a cisgender person. So like you as a cisgender woman, so you were assigned female at birth, you find value in identifying as a woman.
Yeah.
And the way that you present is very, a little bit more feminine, for you, right? And so if you find value in that, just like my wife, Candi, she identifies as a cisgender woman. She feels valuable in that, right? Or me, I'm not cisgender, to where I'm transgender. And sometimes in your journey, as I like to call it, you find different, pockets where you're like, that feels good. And then this can feel different. And if you give yourself permission to change and evolve, then that's okay. So anyway, so with that, cisgender, someone like you and like Candi, transgender, someone like me and lots of other beautiful people in the community. Technically, if you're not cisgender, you're transgender. So on the technical level, some of the queer youth, like they don't identify as, as cisgender, so they're technically that. But however, if they don't want to claim that name and identify that way, they don't have to. I'm like, if you say you're purple, you're purple. Mm-hmm. Whatever makes you feel good in that moment. And I can also relate to that because, like I was saying earlier, like I used to be like, I am a man. And like when we would go out and I would get misgendered and I would just feel the gender dysphoria would just go over my body. And when I say gender dysphoria, that means that for me, as someone that was assigned female at birth, the projection of society's views and their look at me and they're like, that is a female, that's a she, her, versus not seeing me as either and not making me have that identity. And so as a trans person, sometimes if you choose to medically transition, pre-medical transition, you have this time period of dysphoria that, for me especially, you overcompensate. So I was like, I'm a man, I'm this. I very much overcompensated, and it made it where I was overly masculine in ways that's just not authentic. And then once I had top surgery and then was on hormones for a certain amount of time, I felt more comfortable. And then I was like, oh, I can be a soft man. That's okay. Or a soft guy. I can allow myself to be, more feminine at times, but still have this masculine presentation and still have facial hair and still have, not have a flat chest, and still feel empowered in that, versus what people, when you walk into like a Starbucks and you get a coffee and somebody's going to look at you and size you up. And as a trans person, sometimes you're scared. You're like, how is this going to go? And for this cisgender person, they don't even think about that. And I'm like, okay. And now with COVID, it's even different because you have masks on and everything. So it's like even more confusing. But it's like going to get your driver's license, going to do anything medical, just basics, going to a dentist, going to any of these places. You as a trans person walking in there know that there might be a situation that somebody's going to misgender you or you're going to feel uncomfortable just by existing.
I couldn't imagine what it might feel like to feel like wherever you go, you don't feel seen. Yeah.
And, everybody's scene, as you like to say, is different. Mm-hmm. So like for someone like me, I personally go back and forth because I used to be wanting this male presentation so bad. And then now I have it. And sometimes I like get this privilege, this like white male privilege.
I was wondering, do you get treated differently?
Oh, completely. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I look around and I'm like, oh, I wanted this, but it's a very difficult thing to swallow, going from female privilege to male privilege, especially white male privilege. Mm-hmm. And so what I try to do is utilize my privilege and use it for good. What
does that look like?
So So I'm a barber. I have a barbershop, Head Canvas Barbershop in Decatur. And for me, I have all different types of clients, kids, queer youth. I have, cisgender, transgender, all different types of folks that come and sit in my chair. And the education process for me, I think I get a lot of fulfillment in the cisgender male category, because they can sit in my chair and, treat me like a quote, like a guy, like a man. And sometimes, and I've groomed all of my clients at this point, so they know not to say this in my chair.
Right.
But in the past, when I've worked at other barbershops and stuff like that, been in that setting, some guys just sit in your chair and they say these things to me because they think that I'm going to get affirmation from this like bro man locker room talk. And I'm like, swerve. Hold on a second. What did you say? No, I don't want to see a picture of the girl you're dating. Nope. I don't want it. Did she give you consent to show that to me? I don't want to see that. And they're like, what? But I thought you were like one of the guys. And I'm like, nope, that's not how it is. And I'm also like trying to train them how to respect women and how to respect themselves in situations, and not let if they were raised, especially in the South, with like, a little bit of a toxic masculinity, hold on top of them. So it's partially how they were raised in that way. However, you can't use it as an excuse. So why not try to push change in that department?
Do you think we're in a good spot right now to be able to have that conversation in a bigger way? In other words, when somebody sits in your chair and you have an opportunity to kind of educate somebody, do you feel like we have a chance to educate people on a cultural level? Or do you feel like, God, we have so much further?
I feel pretty confident about change happening, because trans people previously to a few years ago, we were just a joke. We were just, that man in a dress, that woman in a suit, this, that. If you look at old movies and stuff like that, it's queer people in general. We're just the joke. We're the punchline. And now there's more visibility, right? So now people don't feel like they're alone. And now that visibility saves lives. And that to me is my main purpose, is to help prevent suicide.
The suicide rates in the trans community, especially for youth, are insane. Yep. And I can see why. Yep. I can see why, of feeling like you don't belong anywhere. And not that you don't belong anywhere, but you're not made to feel, or at least the culture, the society is not set up to allow you to feel like you've got a place. And that has to be devastating.
Yeah, ignorance, honestly, a lot of the time is the problem, because people are just not aware of it. My parents, for example, I grew up in the South in, very small town in Georgia, and I, didn't have the space set for me to be myself. And my parents, it took them, it's now been like 17, 18 years since I was outed. Anyway, fast forward to now, they're supportive, but back then they weren't.
When you say outed, does that mean that you were not choosing this?
Yes. So I did not choose to come out when I was 16. I was outed at the time as a lesbian. And it was in, 2006, 2005.
Did you feel like a lesbian, or did you feel like that was the proper word at that time based on just access to information?
Yeah, so exactly. So that's a great question. So at the time, I felt very empowered in that identity. And so that's a good thing to bring up too, because sexuality and identity are two totally different things.
Yeah.
So a good way to think about it is who you go to bed as. That's like your identity and your gender. So I go to bed as Frankie, transmasculine, queer, pansexual person, right? Who you go to bed with, that's your sexuality. That's who you're attracted to. So like people group them together a lot, and it is the LGBTQ plus community. But if you group them together and assume, you know what I mean? If the trans person is trans, that doesn't mean that they're attracted to the same assignment at birth as they are, right? So putting those together and separating them also, like seeing the difference in it, you know what I mean? Because a lot of people literally think like, oh, you're trans, especially trans women. They assume they're, quote, gay, or they put them in this category. And then they also put trans people in this pedophile category, which is just wild to me. And that's what...
Why would that be the case?
Because it's ignorance. It's if you don't surround yourself with it.
Right.
Like my parents, like I was saying earlier, like I have shown them and I have helped them see it, and I've introduced them to the community. I've taken them to gay pride. We've done all the things, to where if my parents didn't have me as a child, like they would never be, exposed to this kind of stuff. Like I was like the president of the GSA when I was a senior in high school, and I was like, there was like 5 of us, and I was an activist back then, and it was in a small town that like, I remember putting up signs for the GSA and putting up a sign, and then this football player walking by.
What is GSA?
Gay Straight Alliance.
Okay.
So it's not as inclusive back then because we didn't have the language for it, right? So this football player like pulled the sign just off the wall and like called me like a dyke or something like that. And I, at the time was so like, I was not as confident.
Were you bullied? Did you feel like you were bullied back then?
I felt like I was bullied until like my senior year, when I was, my junior year. So my junior year is when I was outed, and it was because I was dating one of the, a popular girl that was like, quote, straight at the time. And so then people thought it was cool. And I was like, oh, cool. That's convenient. But up until then, nobody knew who I was, And then now I have like people on Facebook that are like, oh my God, I remember you in high school. And I'm like, you didn't even like look at me. Mm-hmm. So don't try to, but for me, I try to be the bigger person and say, yeah, how are you? I'm doing great. Mm-hmm. Have you met my beautiful wife, Candi? Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. Have you been following what's going on in the world? Cool. Because we're trying to make change.
I love that. So I know you said that you were outed at that time. Tell me what life was like, it sounds like you've gone through a lot of iterations based on what was available to you, the words, the language, the communities, the support, the resources. What was that like for you?
So when I was outed at 16, I identified at the time as like a lesbian and as gay. And so I will start that here, right? So I started that way. Then after a few years, so I was outed as gay, and then I told my mom and my dad that I was bisexual. I was like, no.
Was that an easier way? Yes. Or did you not feel bisexual, or that was just like an easier...
It was
let me just ease them in.
Yep, it was a way easier way. That is like the stereotypical way that you come out if you don't feel the space.
Yeah.
And that was totally my MO at the time. So then I was like bisexual, quote, and then I dated, just cisgender women. And so a few years later, maybe I was like, 19 or 20. And my mom was like, so are you going to be with a man again? And I was like, no, Mom, I'm gay. And she was like, okay, got it. So then a few years after that, then I started coming into realizing that I didn't feel cisgender, and that I didn't identify with the perception of me being female, quote. And it was confusing to me because I do feel gender fluid, and that's kind of what the first term that gave me power was, gender queer. And because I was like, I'm not a man, but I'm not like a woman. And so I started wearing binders. So a binder is something that you compress your chest. So you're like, it's like a big, it's like a sports bra that's like a larger sports bra that goes over your chest, and it flattens your chest to make it where...
What did it feel like to wear that?
Oh my gosh, so
was it
euphoric.
Empowering?
Oh my gosh, that's gender euphoria. I remember looking at myself and like touching my chest and being like, oh my gosh. And Candi knows, like, the first time that I ever taped my chest with KT tape, that was the first time that I looked at my chest. And right now I'm touching my chest right now, which is, I've had top surgery, and I remember touching my chest and it was flat. And I could have a button-up shirt and just unbuttoned a little bit, and it was so cool. And to have that moment, I remember thinking, like, I want this, but does that make me have to be in this other category? And so that is what helped me cultivate myself in knowing that I am gender fluid in all the ways, where if some days I feel more masculine, that's great. If some days I feel more feminine, that's okay. And makeup and hair and clothes, those are just clothes and makeup and hair. It doesn't make you XYZ if that's not what you want to be. However, if you find value in it, if like I can cut somebody's hair and give them a, gender affirming haircut, where I cut somebody's hair that had longer hair and wants it to be short, and then I cut their hair short, and then they look at themselves in the mirror. Like, I remember,
you could probably see that. You could probably spot, like, I nailed it. This is how they feel inside.
Right, because I can relate to that too.
Yeah.
I remember touching my chest that first time, and I was like, oh my gosh, this feels right. And my journey is not everybody's journey,
Mm-hmm.
And that's like important to know that, medically transitioning doesn't make you trans. You don't have to.
It doesn't?
No, you don't have to. So if you, as a transgender person, don't want to medically transition, meaning taking HRT, meaning testosterone for someone like me.
Hormone replacement therapy, yeah.
Mm-hmm. So for me, as a assigned female at birth, I take testosterone. And people that are assigned male at birth, AMABs, they would take estrogen if that's something that they wanted. So if they wanted something physically different in their body. However, you can be transgender and identify that way without medically transitioning. And that's important because people don't always want to do that. Like, I know trans guys that have been on T for 15 years and they have not had top surgery.
That I got. I thought you meant medically transitioning and then you're not a trans when you have medically transitioned.
No. So let me rephrase that. So you don't have to medically transition.
Yes, that part I know. Yes.
Yeah. So that's, sorry for the confusion.
No worries.
Yeah. So yeah, just saying that, like, because a lot of people, once I started medically transitioning, they started taking me more seriously, and
was that frustrating?
Very. And that's part of it, where like now people can put me in this male category. And before, like, I was like, okay, no, I'm using he pronouns, and then they would misgender me. And now I use he, they. And for me, he feels good. It's not she. I've never really wanted she, but I'm leaning really into they right now because they makes me feel really seen. Because sometimes my presence makes people uncomfortable. And I have had to learn that. And it's not because of me as a person. It's because of me looking the way that I do right now as a white male passing person. Example, like in a lift, right? I've been in a lift with someone and, we're wearing masks, of course, and it's, a safe environment. And I remember this, it was like a black woman. And she was really sweet. And I remember trying to out myself in a way, like, casually.
Do you feel like you have to do that? Like you have to kind of affirm who you are? Or like if somebody is looking at you like confused, do you feel like you have to go out of your way?
I mean, the confusion, I'm like, okay, it's working. I love that. Yeah.
You like that. Okay.
I've been confusing people since I was like 15. My mom's always like, no, but it's okay. No. All right.
Okay.
Right. So the confusion is fine. It's the assumption that I am like a white cis dude. I like the visibility of being a trans person as a trans masculine person. And so when I feel like my identity is erased in that way, where they're just like, oh no, you're now cisgender. And again, some trans masculine and trans men like that. That's what we call stealth. If you want to be stealth and you want to go in society and feel safer and be in a, that makes you feel affirmed, that's good for you. I'm happy for you. But for me as Frankie, I find so much value in being super loud about the fact that I'm trans and letting people know, because me letting people know is showing other people that they're not alone and that this is okay and that I'm existing. I'm, thriving. I'm trying to do everything I can to help the community. And so that's my choice. I choose to be in this position. So if I get hate on Instagram or on social media or in person.
Do you get hate on Instagram?
Not as much anymore, but occasionally it happens. But if I have the spoons or the patience for it, I try to educate people and try to say, I'm so sorry that you're hurting right now, and that you're unaware of people like me. And, you know, we're just trying to live our lives and move forward and not have to be put in a category of othered in a negative way, you know.
Why you? I know you said that you were an activist from a younger age. Why you wave the flag? Why is it so important for you?
I think it's important for me personally in the South, growing up in Snellville too. It was just like, there was only, you know, a few of us. And once I was outed, I was kind of like, well, shit, I'm here. Okay. I guess I'm already out. Everybody knows I'm like the gay, you know? And so I felt like I had a purpose, I guess. And even at a young age, even at a different time, before social media, the MySpace days, you know, back then, like it was before we had our phones up in our faces all the time and we can just see people on our phones. It was a different time, and acceptance was different. And people, you know, just being queer, just literally being gay, a lesbian, bisexual, you know, just in this category back then was, you know, just so intensely offensive to people. And trans people, we were still all the way over here. Because people just, it was almost like we weren't there because we weren't being shown. And so people are like, yeah, LGBT, yeah. It's like LGBT, we're over here. So the community and the disconnect with that, we're trying to merge these communities together and also see the value in it as a community. So that way we can make actual change and make people see that, you know, the reason why queer people are trying to be extra loud right now, we're not making up new terms. We have actually we've actually know the language now. Like how beautiful
you have
is
a
that?
Language, yeah.
It's so beautiful. Like I remember looking on Instagram, you know, 10 years ago, like, and seeing androgynous people and like being like, oh my gosh, wow. I can't believe is that me? Like I remember, and they weren't me, but it was like I saw a part of myself in this person. And no matter your personal issues with your own body, you can still find community in it and find like, oh, I can relate to them in this way. You know, just because they're taller than me or skinnier than me or more muscular or more tattooed or XYZ, your personal journey is your own still. And you don't need to look at somebody else and say, since I'm not like this, I don't fit in this category.
Yeah. You know, I saw on your Instagram, I think it was like a week or two ago, about your journey with the testosterone, the hormone replacement therapy, where it showed where you had like your voice before you started it and then it deepening.
Yep.
Does it feel exciting to hear your voice deepening? Because you don't have to take T. It's a choice, right?
Totally.
You know, so I wonder, what was that like hearing your voice where you're like, oh, yes, I sound like I want to sound?
It was very empowering. That's why I documented it, you know, so much at the time. And I, you know, again, like everybody's journey is different. I really wanted my voice to be deeper. I really hated having a, you know, higher pitched voice. I wanted like the body fat distribution, which takes like years to really change. Like my face changed. Like it's wild, you know? And so for me, I found value in that, and seeing the evolution of myself is really beautiful to see, as well as giving myself permission to say, okay, if down the road you feel differently, that's okay. And it's not saying major differencing. It's meaning that like, I'm okay wearing makeup now. I'm okay wearing like kind of like, you know, quote, more feminine stuff when we perform, you know, because we perform, we do burlesque sometimes.
That is so cool. So do you do it together or do you do it separately?
So we do it together and separately. And Candi really is the real dancer.
The star of the show.
She's the real dancer. I've learned
You're a
everything
knockout,
from her.
Candi. You are gorgeous.
Oh my God. Thank you so much for saying that. I appreciate that.
Yeah. So, and I'm wondering too, I was listening to a podcast about a Black trans man, and he was working at Target as a female, and then he medically transitioned to male. And he was working under the same boss. And when he became a male, he was taken more seriously at Target. He was offered a promotion where it was never even offered before, as a male, and a Black male too. And he was saying how, like, this is kind of bullshit, and I wonder, what is life like? How do people respond to you?
Right. That's a great question. So being a Black trans person, that's like double right there, because I have this white skin on me, whether I am presenting female or male, I am still like, I have this privilege on me for just being a white person. Right. So then going from a white female to a white male was wild. I remember one of the first times I worked at this place, and we had like a courtyard area. And so I would like go and, be on my phone, walking through on my lunch break. And there was this table of ladies that would eat there every day. And, I would walk there almost every day, on my phone. And there was this one time after I had been on T for like, I don't know, less than a year maybe. And I kind of like stopped at the table, and I was on my phone, like probably texting Candy. And all the ladies were like high talking, all this stuff. And then when I stood there, they all stopped talking. And I literally like didn't realize it till a minute later. And like my presence made all of these women stop. And I literally like looked up, and I was like, and I just like awkwardly like kind of scurried to the side, because I realized, I was like, holy shit, like my male presentation just made them be like, oh, there's a man here. And we need to listen. And like, I'm like, oh God, no, hold on. No, you keep talking, please enjoy yourselves, or like I've walked into a gas station, I remember, and it was like a gas station that was like, not like the best area, I would say. And so I walk in, and like, there's like, people over here checking out, people doing lottery tickets. There's like a woman with like her 2 or 3 kids. There's like some other people in line. There's like a line of at least 3 or 4 people. And then like the family. And I walk in, and I went there to get like, I don't remember what I was getting, maybe gas and like, and so I walk kind of up to the counter a little bit, like, and give space between me and the people. And all of the people moved out of the way. And then the guy behind the counter said, "Sir, can you come over here?" And I literally was like, nope, I'm going to get a Gatorade. And I like went to the back of the gas station. I was like, what the fuck just happened? Literally all of these people. And, it was uncomfortable for me, because my white male, ness made all of these people, all people of color, move out of the way. Like standing in line, a family with kids. And I was just like, oh, no, I'm going to go to the back. And like, I hid back there for like 5 minutes till like everybody was gone. And like, it really fucked with my head for a minute, because I was like, wow, my presence has this on it. And so then I thought, okay, what can I do with this? And so if I am going to have this privilege, because there's male and female privilege, right? Like my wife we can be somewhere and she can get female privilege in certain settings, and I can, use it to an advantage. But when like you are shook with it for the first time, when like I haven't had this ever, it's like kind of hard to accept, because it does piss me off in a way, because I'm like, I wasn't taken as seriously as a female, first of all. And now that I'm a white dude, I'm taken more seriously. And then now I'm mad for every woman and every,
Yeah, I couldn't imagine the level of sensitivity that you have experiencing through all of the different iterations of that. And I wonder, outside of the stage, is it more comfortable? Is it more affirming for you to blend in or to stand out?
So I would say it depends on the setting. So we, Candy and I, we eloped in 2019 in Jamaica. And Jamaica is not a very LGBTQ, welcoming.
Why'd you pick there?
We picked there because it was kind of a last minute thing. The place that we were supposed to have a small wedding fell through, and then we're like, well, we'll just go and have a weekend together. So that's kind of what we did in the hopes of having a ceremony in 2020. Then 2020 happened. But anyway, so we went, and when we were there, I'd had top surgery. So I had, my chest, a double mastectomy, taken, my chest down, and I had scars. And at the time I was wearing silicone strips over the scars to protect it from the sun. But people still perceived me as like a cis guy. And they it's right in, it's right here in front of you. This is happening. You can see this. I have this look. And when we were there, we would talk to some people about it. But when we were there, it was a little nerve-wracking when it comes to safety. And we were in a, super nice resort. So they were like, we'll take your money. It's fine. However, there was one element of safety when it comes to that kind of setting. Overall, besides that, I definitely prefer to be out. That's why I cover myself with the trans flag colors all the time. And I like to talk to people about it because I have this different, perspective. I have a secret in a way. It's not a secret. It's I have I say quote with dating with women, I've had a period before, I've gone through, I've had, just been put in this other category as lower than men, and this other category to where I have this perspective where I've been all over the map, where if women are going through something, I can empathize with that more. Or a certain person, I can understand it, where, if she's oh, I'm having, period cramps or something. I'm oh yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
You've been all genders.
I've been all over the map. So
and ungendered.
Right. Exactly. All the genders.
Wow. That is wild. So can you share why the medical transition? What did you feel like you were in the wrong body?
So that's a good question. So,
and is that obnoxious to ask?
No, that's a good question. So there are a lot of trans people that feel that way, that feel that they were assigned, wrong at birth, or they were born in the wrong body. For me, I don't identify that way because I find value in my story. And so I find that I feel like I'm like a unicorn, I previously to getting on hormones, on HRT, testosterone, I always wanted top surgery because I was saying earlier, when I'm in my 20s, I wore a binder and I was like, oh my God, this feels right. And hormones was something I was very skeptical about. And I went through therapy every week for a year before I did anything medically. And not everybody has to do that, but that was the choice that I decided to make because there are irreversible changes when you go on hormones.
Yeah.
So if I were to go off of hormones, my voice is not going to go back to where it was before. My body fat distribution will change. It'll go back to being more feminine shape. I'll get my cycle back. But some of the hair will lighten, but it's not going to go anywhere. So some of these changes are irreversible. So you have to keep that in mind. So you can change things. Say if I didn't like the facial hair later, I can shave it off, whatever. So for me, top surgery was always what I wanted, whether I wanted to go on hormones or not. And I feel like hormones for me really affirmed me, and especially the beginning. And who knows if I'm going to be on hormones indefinitely? Who knows if I'll go down on my dose? Who knows if I'll go off of hormones? That's my story that I get to tell. And so if I find that some of the changes that medical stuff, hormonally doesn't work for me, then I can just alter it and talk to my doctor and see, okay, what do I not like about it? And that's one thing that Candi really helped me in the beginning is making a list. So I'm what are the positives and negatives of this? Because if you don't make a list, you're just going to be overwhelmed and say, oh, well, I want the voice thing, but do I want this? It's no, you need to do the research. This is changing your hormones. You might see somebody on Instagram that you think that has gone through a medical transition in XYZ way, but you don't know everything. That person could have been, had facial hair before they went on hormones. That person could have, you're a different person. So don't think that the results are going to be the same for everybody. And then if some people take hormones and then they're like, oh man, should I have done this? It's like, if that's the case, then sit down and write down how you feel. Do you need to change this? Do you need to work on it? Don't just be like, oh, I made the bad decision. It's like, all right, let's talk about it with your therapist, with a professional. Let's figure out what you want to do.
This was a very serious decision. All of it. Yeah.
And it should be for everyone.
Yes. Yeah.
And again, like top surgery for me was not like the hardest decision about it was just financially how I was going to get there.
I'm afraid to ask this because I think it opens up a whole can of worms. When you are on HRT, is there insurance that covers it? Is it very expensive or is it more accessible?
So it really depends on your insurance. There is some insurance that does cover it. For me, my insurance covers, part of it, and I pay the copay. And for a lot of trans people, a lot of things are not covered. Yeah. Especially in the South. I had to raise money at multiple burlesque shows and crowdfunding and, to take the 6 weeks off of work. Not everybody is privileged enough to do that. Luckily I, had my own business at the time, so I could do that. And so it is a lot of factors that you have to keep in mind. And now that it's 2022, there's a lot more resources out there for people.
That's good to know.
Yeah. Especially with a lot of things that are online. Like there's all kinds of like online hormonal services that you can do, like talk to your doctor and they can mail them to you and, depending on your situation. So like a lot of people that are like, well, I can't go out because of COVID or I can't do this. It's like we can find you a way. Yeah. There's a way to get there.
Candi, I'm so interested. You have seen Frankie through so many of these evolutions. How did you two meet?
Absolutely. So first of all, I'm Candi Lecoeur, and I am a queer femme francophile burlesque dancer. And
What is francophile? I think I got queer femme. What is francophile?
I speak French, and I'm obsessed with all things
Okay.
French.
All right.
And so I, everybody gives me all the little Paris knickknacks and things everywhere. So Frankie and I have been together for almost 5 years, and we have been married for 3 years, and we met at a burlesque show. And so he got to see me when I'm all dolled up with my hair and makeup and fake eyelashes and looking totally glamorous. And we did have a very beautiful love story. We do have a very beautiful love story. It was kind of like love at first sight.
Yeah, we had a meet cute.
We had a meet cute, yes. we recently loved that term, a meet cute. And so when I first met Frankie was identifying as male and was using he, him pronouns. However, he had not yet started the testosterone hormone therapy. He had not yet had his top surgery, which is the double mastectomy, chest masculinization, and the legal name change to change his name from the feminine name that he had been given at birth to his chosen name. So I was a part of the journey for all of those steps along the way. And it's very clear to me what a good, positive journey this has been for him. And that he has been given the freedom to pursue his gender exploration without having to meet someone else's standards or norms or box of what a gender is going to be like, or without thinking that, if I transition from the gender that I'm showing to the gender I want to be, is my partner still going to love me? And so having a strong support system that will still stay by your side throughout that journey has been a key component to what I see for trans people feeling like they can properly move forward and not be stagnated because they fear retribution.
What was that like for you? of what you wanted? Were you afraid, or, like it sounds like you were in a supportive position. I don't know if you have experienced this before or supported other people. What was your journey like?
That's a great question. And so Frankie is the first transgender person that I have ever dated. And so I did not have prior experience to helping anyone out with their journey or being that guidance along the way prior to meeting him. And it came really naturally to me to see that this is the right choice for him. This is the right move. And I kind of think of him like a Pokemon sometimes. And I know that's a unique analogy. But my Frankie is ever evolving. And, the Pokemon evolve from this form of a creature, and then they evolve to a different form. And sometimes this Pokemon that starts out this way, you can evolve it, and the caterpillar Pokemon could evolve into a moth, or it could evolve into a butterfly. And the butterfly is actually a strong analogy in the trans community of that a trans person can be in the caterpillar stage of their transition, they can be in the cocoon stage of their transition, or they can be in the butterfly stage of their transition. And so no matter which stage they're in, they are still valid as a trans person. So they don't have to have completed all of the transitional surgeries in order to be seen as trans. And so I do have a lot of, I'm in a Facebook group for partners of trans people, and there are constantly people in this group who are saying things like, oh, my partner and I were lesbians, and I really feel strongly that I identify as a lesbian, and I don't want, my partner just told me that they want to transition to, from being female to being male, but that means that I would be dating a guy, and I don't like that. And
that has to be confusing in some ways, though. Yeah. Like, how do you come to terms with that? Because it seems like the adherence to a social identity is so important that it can fog, each social identity you have has a certain set of rules, and so to have it be fluid, to have it be the person that you love versus, I don't know, there's a lot to unpack there.
Most definitely. My take on labels is that you can let labels serve you, let the label identify where the label should identify you. You shouldn't change yourself so that you can fit with what is on this label. And so if you identify as a lesbian, that's fine and that's perfect. But then if your taste modify so that you then feel, oh, well, now I'm attracted to this trans man.
Yeah.
And then that label of lesbian doesn't quite fit me anymore. Therefore, I'm going to modify that and say I identify as queer and not as lesbian. Because
can you tell me what the difference is between queer and lesbian?
Absolutely.
I don't know what I've asked gay people what queer is, and they're like, I really don't know. So
gotcha. So queer being more of the umbrella term for the entire LGBT community.
Okay.
And then having under the queer umbrella, you can be like gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender, pansexual, any of the separate labels, the same way that trans being an umbrella term where under the trans umbrella is the non-binary or trans-masculine, trans-feminine, F to M, female to male, MTF, male to female. And so all of those are under the trans umbrella where that's the gender identity spectrum. And then where the sexuality spectrum falls under the queer umbrella.
Okay.
And so instead of identifying as one sector under the umbrella, I can identify as queer, and that's the umbrella term. And therefore I can switch between the different identities fluidly and not have it mess up with an identity, a label that I've attached. I think that a lot of times people attach themselves to a label and then they stick to that label even if their tastes change, instead of letting the label reflect who they are.
Do you think that's a big challenge in the culture, in the community?
It can be, yes.
The fluidity.
That being attached to the term lesbian, or, you know, someone in my shoes, someone who is partners with someone who, you know, Frankie never identified as female during the time that I have been with him. However, some people do. Some people are in a relationship with someone who identifies as one gender, and then during the course of their relationship, that person is going to change their gender. And if you still love that person, and Frankie is the same person. He's beautiful, and he even flourishes even more. And so as someone who loves him, to see him being able to flourish in his full self by having this gender euphoric gender expression, that is a beautiful thing. And I only want that kind of comfort for the person that I love. Were you scared that it would change the dynamic of your relationship? I feel like it is very common for people to be scared. And I feel kind of unique in that I was not scared that Frankie's going to transition and I'm not going to be attracted to him anymore. You know, because I know how I felt. And I know that my attraction to him was not isolated to, I'm attracted to his chest. And if he loses his chest, then I'm no longer attracted to him. That was not the case at all. And so, especially when you see how much pain having a chest gave him back when he had a chest, it was very psychologically damaging to him. He had a lot of moments in our relationship where he had to change his clothes like 5 times because there was you could see the curvature of where a chest would be, even though he was wearing a binder and holding the girls down really tightly with being bound. But then if he saw any kind of curve in the mirror, then he would just feel so defeated and go and change his clothes again. Or it would be in the middle of summer and it's super hot outside, but he would still wear a leather jacket because he didn't want anyone to be able to see that he had a chest. He wanted to be seen as masculine, and it was hurting him and causing him a lot of psychological harm to have that chest. And so by eliminating that didn't change the way that I love him.
You guys have a really beautiful love story, at least what I can see on Instagram. And you both mentioned that you're pansexual. And I know that you are open about ethical non-monogamy for your relationship. Does that change like the people that you have around you? I imagine that they have to kind of be supportive of all of this, you know, and be as open-minded as that, you know, like you guys have this beautiful love story, but there's more to that. Is it about redefining love?
So we like to think about it like, you know, especially me, like I'm Frankie Love, you know, I have so much love to give, you know, and for us, you know, personally in our relationship, we do have a hierarchical, you know, relationship where she's my wife, she's my primary partner, she comes first, and anybody after her is amazing and I appreciate them, but she has, you know, she's my number one, and that works for us. So when it comes to our openness, we have a few partners, and it's been interesting to see how people react, because people are always like, oh my gosh, I don't know if I could do that. You know, like, and I'm like,
I can barely deal with one.
Exactly. They have some kind of statement to say,
right.
Or like I've had, especially cis guys that are like, so how do you make that work? How do I convince my wife to do that? And I'm like, that's not how it works. First of all, you communicate, and that's the main, you know, factor we have to overly communicate. So in one poly class that we took at like Frolicon or Dragon Con one year, there was this person that was saying, for a monogamous relationship, you have to have middle school communication skills. For a polyamorous or non-monogamous relationship, you have to have PhD communication skills. So like you have to break things down and have really uncomfortable conversations sometimes, and have to figure out boundaries, and have to go through things and see if this works for you. So non-monogamy doesn't work for everybody. So what we've had to do is figure out what it looks like for us. And my family, especially in the beginning, was not very open to it, just like the queerness. And then eventually we just kind of had to be like, this is our life. We're doing this ethically. We're doing this. We love each other. We're talking through it, like we have, therapy individually and couples therapy. Like we're like, it's so important to us to make sure that we're doing everything the best way that we can and using the tools, because a lot of people, they use non-monogamy as like a last resort. And they're like, oh, well, we haven't been as intimate. Why don't we just open up our marriage or our relationship? And then they start opening, the doors to other people. And then their insecurities start coming right in front of them. And you aren't even like aware that it happens at first sometimes. And then you're like, oh my God, I didn't know I was going to feel that. So for us, we started open. And I think that worked for us. And not everybody, needs to start that way. Not everybody has the relationship that we do, and the communication skills that we do. So I think that having more love just makes us love each other more. And just like seeing the value in like, if somebody can take care of her, especially if I'm unavailable, if I'm doing XYZ and then she's taken care of, then I need to see the full value in that. And that's just amazing. That just means we've got a bigger village.
That's what it seems like. It seems like it's born out of love, not out of, I'm not happy, I need more, like it,
Exactly.
It seems like a more inclusive arrangement.
Yeah, my mom, I remember before we got married.
How did you convince your parents of all of this?
Yeah, she was like, but why not just, y'all are getting married. So why not just you and Candy just be, like, can you just, and I'm like, Mom, this is our relationship and this works for us.
Was it important for you to share this with your mom and not keep it under wraps of just, this is our life?
I'm pretty open with my mom at this point in my life too, because I think there's, education in there for her and visibility.
Yeah.
And helping to just unstigmatize queer people and non-monogamous people, and seeing, oh, we're doing it ethically. Yeah, we get tested. We, all the safe.
And ethically is open communication, open. It's respectful. There's no, there's no malice, or it's not cheating. You know what I mean? It is, and it sounds like you're doing it responsibly as well.
Right.
With the larger question of, where is my place in changing the culture? I feel like our place in changing the culture is to destigmatize the gender norms and to destigmatize the thoughts about non-monogamy. And so I like to think that I'm not going to hide or apologize for anything if it's not wrong. And if I don't feel like the ethical non-monogamy that I'm practicing, I don't feel like any part of that is wrong. And so therefore, I shouldn't feel like I have to hide it. I shouldn't feel like in front of certain company that I can't mention that I have a girlfriend in addition to my husband, and that there's nothing wrong with that. It's not, you want to get rid of the taboo status because you want to project the environment and the kind of levels that you want to see in the world. And so it's not going to happen unless you make the change on the small level and keep making a difference small, little by little. I
think I've seen more and more of ethical non-monogamy than I ever have before. There are communities there. I have done shows kind of addressing it as well, where I just think everything is kind of being broken down and rebuilt in a different way. I just hope, I think about your parents living in a small town, rural Georgia, where, kind of deep seated in those Southern, very binary kind of roots. And I wonder what do you think helped your parents accept you as you needed to be accepted? Because I know you said it was a process and it was hard.
I think that it was, like you said, a process, and there's been evolutions of that as well. And I think that meeting Candi and being with her, she really helped motivate me, communicating to them how important it was. Like, I would get misgendered by my parents in the beginning a ton. And at first, we were just dating. She was like, okay, I'm not going to like talk to your parents and correct them. And then after a while, then we were engaged, and she was like, your dad can't keep doing this, and she would correct my dad.
What did that look like? What was misgendering in that case?
So he would use like my dead name, so that sometimes
Is that what you call a dead name?
So in the community, sometimes that can be like your previous given name, versus your chosen name.
Yeah.
And so, or your legal name, if you will. And so he would dead name me and misgender me using she, her pronouns. And at the time, especially, I was like super he, him, not open to he, they, or definitely not she. And so it was hard.
You never liked she.
No.
Never liked it.
I mean, which is interesting, because I feel the more I'm coming in my journey, the more I never really get misgendered that often anymore. Mm-hmm. It's very rare. On the phone, I get misgendered more than I do anything, which is like, I'm like, you're cute. But I also see, like, sometimes when I'm misgendered, I'm like, oh, okay, they see me in a way, if that makes sense. And sometimes people don't. And they're just like, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to convince myself, because I am so much more than male or female. I am so much more than that. And that's also like cisgender people like you and my wife Candi here are more than just a cisgender person. You have different, she can be way more butch than I can. Okay. There was one time I was practicing for a routine, and she was rewiring our dryer. Okay. And I was wearing my old prom dress because it was like a storytelling routine.
I kind of want to be there for this.
And I literally looked at her and I was like, babe, what are we doing right now? Like,
that looks like a perfect Instagram photo.
I'm in a dress and you're rewiring our dryer right now. So it's like breaking the norms of that too, to where like when we're seen in public, sometimes people just assume that like we're a cis couple, and they're like, oh, but does she know that he's gay? But he seems effeminate.
So just to clarify for the visuals, that at the current moment, I present very feminine, and Frankie is like a genderqueer masculine presentation. So that when we switch roles, where I'm the one who's butching and wiring something up, and he's wearing a dress that he's rehearsing for a dance routine, that's kind of him taking the feminine role for a moment, and me taking what would be considered a more stereotypical masculine role in that moment. And it's fun to not be limited, or not to hold yourself back, and to be able to cherry pick the exact qualities that you want, and to not be stuck inside of a box or a definition of what your gender should be, or what your role should be in your relationship, because you get to set those terms.
Yeah. So where was that? So I got off on a tangent on the misgendering of your dad. Where was the breaking point?
So there was one time I can remember at one of her burlesque shows, before I was like doing burlesque, I think more, and I invited my parents. And it was like a few weeks before Gay Pride, and my parents were originally supposed to come with us, and it was going to be a thing. So anyway, I invite my parents.
Were they resistant to it, or were they like, all right?
They were into going to Pride.
Okay.
The using my pronouns and stuff like that was an issue in my name. So I invited them to my, in Atlanta, to where my turf, where I'm comfortable. These are my people. And my dad, even the jeweler that I got her engagement ring, was there, like with her trans husband. Like, and my dad kept misgendering me and using my dead name. And then people are looking around like, who the fuck is he talking about? Like, looking around, and like, there was just this moment where I just like was like, ugh, and I just like was so mad and sad. And like, I went outside, and she kind of like followed me up there, and I was like crying, and she was like, your dad needs to see you like this. And I was like, no, I don't want to see him. No, go inside. This is your show. I don't want him. She was like, your dad needs to see you like this. And then like, I think we called my dad, and they came up in the parking lot, and my dad and I just got into it. And then we didn't talk for a few weeks. And after that, I feel like it kind of just changed things to where it took him a while still to respect and do the pronouns thing. It's taken years. However, I think that like ripping the Band-Aid off in that moment, like it making it uncomfortable, and him seeing me crying and being like, how would you come to my comfort zone and do this to me? I trusted you. I allowed you to come in here, you know? And so I think after that kind of changed, and that's why Candi is such a big point in my story, because her being an ally for me has been a huge part of it, because allies, that's what's going to really make change. You know, we'd go out to a restaurant and they'd say, hey ladies, how are y'all doing? And then I would just like sink into the chair, and then they would say, what would you like? And she'd say, I'll take a sweet tea, and he will take a Dr. Pepper. And then like the person's like, oh, well, you know, and makes it very casual, not threatening.
Yeah.
And so she kind of advocated for me, to where that kind of made me, yeah, I'm he. Yeah, thank you. You know, because sometimes as trans people and gender nonconforming people, we don't want to correct people. So if somebody misgenders you or uses the wrong name, sometimes you're just like, I'm just going to put up with this because I don't want to have to deal with it. Oh, I'm sorry. Oops. Oh, I just assumed, but I'm sorry. I'm making this about me now. Versus like, if I misgender somebody, the best proper way to respond, if you, so say I am talking to Candi and she misgenders me or someone else, right? And the person says they, them, and she would say, thank you. They, them, move on. You thank the person, oh, thank you. I made a mistake. Great. Yeah. Moving on. And even me, an activist, a trans activist in the community, I'm not perfect. Sometimes I mess up people's pronouns. And I've done it like one time recently, and I was like, oh my God. And I tried to like give myself grace. And I said, you're not perfect. You didn't know that this person changed their pronouns, you know? So if you see it that way, then, I mean, it's not a big deal. You know, my parents, after they were kind of like, oh, now I get it. You're just trying to exist and just trying to be. Yeah. And this actually doesn't do anything bad to my life. Why does this do anything to affect me? No, I'm just the parent of, okay. Why am I hurting anyone? No. What's the problem? I'm just trying to exist, you know? And if you can just ask questions like, what are your pronouns? All this kind of stuff. Like, this is what opens up the door to change. This is what people start wearing their pronouns. Cisgender people, like, you know, like you and Candi, like when you go to somewhere and you say, hi, my name is Allison. What are your pronouns? My pronouns are she, her. And the person says, thank you so much for asking. My pronouns are he, they. You know, and it's just, that's it. Moving on. And that small little conversation could change the entire dynamic. And those small little tiny conversations are what opens up this door of change that can just normalize trans people and putting people in the same category, like being like, okay, let's not completely marginalize this entire community. Why don't we just, we're all human, you know, like why not just accept people?
Frankie, when do you feel the most embodied?
I would say being on stage is fun and it is empowering. I think I feel the best when I can create a space for, you know, trans and gender nonconforming people to feel comfortable being themselves. So like when I cut somebody's hair and I give them a gender affirming haircut as a small example, which is not small. That's a big thing. That's a big step in someone's journey. But like I've been given some really amazing opportunities to be visible in the community. Like I was featured in the Goran hat ad, and to just show visibility. And for me, like, I hope people look at me in the Goran store at the time for that month and they're like, oh my gosh, that's me, or that could be, you know, and that small bit of visibility, it's like, cool, that's awesome and all that. But like for me, it's not as much of the cool points versus like the visibility and the lives that you can change and the change that you can help create.
That's so powerful. Candi, what do you know that you wish other people could know?
That is a great question. What do I know that I wish other people should know? It is... I'm blanking right now. what do I know that I wish other people should know?
I think being in your position, you are, there aren't a lot of, I don't know, you have chosen a path and fallen in love with somebody that not everybody has that opportunity to do that. And you've supported him throughout a really big arc of a journey. From your position as an ally, as somebody who's married to a trans person, what do you know that you wish other people could know?
I wish that other people could know that loving your person throughout their entire journey is possible, and you don't have to put your person into a box so that they stay into a category that fits with the box that you've put yourself in.
Yeah.
To be open to evolution, to be open to modification, to not let the labels keep you in a box, but let the labels describe you wherever you are on the current journey, and don't be afraid to modify your labels over time. And just to base your decisions in love. And if you're trying to make a decision, and then if you think about the motivation for your decision, if your decision is motivated by an insecurity, then that's not the right decision. I don't want you to transition because it would make me feel insecure about my status as a lesbian, or I don't want to use he, him pronouns for you, because then I would have to open my mind up to think that there's something outside of the box. Those are decisions that are based on an insecurity. And so if your decision is based on insecurity, then you need to reevaluate your situation and overcome your insecurity, challenge yourself to overcome that insecurity, instead of holding people around you to fulfill your insecurity. And that goes with non-monogamy as well. That instead of thinking that person is only going to be together with their one partner, and that if you open that up a little bit more, does that make you feel insecure? Yeah, well, then challenge your own insecurities, because there's nothing wrong with people loving multiple people. You can love your siblings. You can love your parents. Love is infinite. Time is finite, but love is infinite. And so when you don't restrict love because of your own insecurities.
That, I think, is really powerful for humans in general, because I think from a humanistic perspective, to love somebody as human, but to be confident enough in yourself to love yourself enough to be able to do that, that's freaking culture changing. What about you, Frankie? What do you know that you wish other people could know?
Touching on what Candi said, when I identified, quote, as a lesbian when I was younger, and a girl that I was dating, her mom had a problem with me being, a girl at the time. And I remember telling her, I wish your mom could just see me as a person. I wish that she would just not just see me as this, person converting you or whatever she wants to convince herself of. And, that was something that I didn't even know in hindsight, oh man, that's foreshadowing, if you will, being trans. And so when people, especially some of the stuff she tells me in some of the groups that she's in, talk about, oh, I don't want my partner to transition medically because I'm not going to be attracted to them anymore. And they make it about them. She's saying, you're making it about yourself. This person is the same person. Are you going to say that if they remove their chest that you're going to just not be attracted to them? That's just ignorance in my eyes. And, that's from a personal trans perspective, So, and I've also been with, the girl that I was with before her, was no, please don't get top surgery. I love your chest, and really was excited to be holding on to that lesbian identity, and just didn't see how ignorant that was, to be with someone like me and continue to be with me and say, no, I'm not going to use those pronouns. No, I'm not going to do that. And so with that, if people would just open up your mind a little bit and say, am I trying to leave this person because I'm insecure about this, or am I just trying to leave this person because we're not compatible and I'm just using this as an excuse? Or what's the reasoning behind it? Because,
sounds like a deeper self journey.
Exactly. So like it's probably something deeper, you know what I mean? And later on in life, you might be mad at yourself because you'll be like, man, now 5 years later, I, in hindsight, had this friend that told me about this kind of thing. And now I'm like, man, I was a really big asshole to this person that I was dating. And we were really compatible, but I was just ignorant at the time. And they're actually the same person, even though I was just unaware that they're not going to change completely. They're just going to change presenting wise, you know? So if people just see that perception, even as a person of a friend or family, you know, your family member, your friend is not going to change. That's the same person. They're in the same skin as they were in before. It's just going to be a little bit changed, you know, and a little bit more comfortable for them. So stop making it about yourself.
So how can people find you?
So you can find me on Instagram at Every Head Is My Canvas, and my website as well, everyheadismycanvas.com.
And for me, I am Candi Lecoeur on Instagram. And so that is CANDI_LECOEUR. And Frankie is the owner and head master barber at Head Canvas Barbershop. And so you can look at Head Canvas Barbershop on Instagram as well. And I also produce a monthly burlesque show. It's called the Unwrapped Burlesque Show at My Sister's Room, which is the only standing lesbian bar in the Southeast at this point in time. And so come out and see us.
Is that right?
That's correct.
Wow.
Yes.
That's embarrassing.
Right.
It's the South. You know what I mean?
Well, they've shut down over time, unfortunately.
So you can come out and see us perform burlesque, and then follow us on Instagram, and then to see when we're performing, and to see whenever we're doing any presentations, and to follow along.
And I think even your Instagram accounts are really helpful for an ally and somebody like me who does, you know, who's not in that world, but even just to understand and be more supportive, just for an education perspective. So I thank you both so much for being here. It was such a pleasure. What a joy. I'm so grateful to Frankie Love and Candi Lecoeur for sharing their stories. Sitting with them both, I felt so much love and hope, not only for each other, but for humanity as a whole. It was really something to behold of somebody that really, really embraced love. And I loved how they were both advocating so fiercely for the rights of the transgender and queer communities. You can find their contact info in the show notes, and I'm so grateful to them both. In the meantime, if you want more culture-impacting stories like this and straight-up confessions from me, go to ALLISON'Hair.com and get in touch. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next week.